is Kurt Ackermann. I head up the South African Urban Food and Farming Trust. We're a local nonprofit, and we are the hosts of the Food Indaba. And so on behalf of the entire Food Indaba team, I'd like to welcome you here. Excuse me, I need one more hand to make this work. So I just want to start also with a thank you to Maker's Landing and to the V&A Solve the Waterfront team for hosting us. We've been in this venue for 4 or 5 years now, and it's been fantastic. There are some challenges with the acoustics, but I think we've managed to make it work, and we really are grateful to be here in the hub of so much food systems related activity, from the ocean and the harbor to the kitchens and the people and the intent that's here. And this year's Food Indaba 2025 is our largest yet. We've had, today and tomorrow. Tomorrow marks the end of the 2 weeks. So we will have had 25 events over 14 days. And we've been building this year by year. Last year, we hosted 534 people at 23 events. And we had 65 hours of engagement. Online, we engaged over 500,000 people, and our total media reach was 58 million. So in addition to being a program where we bring diverse people together in a space like today, and a wide range of experiences from a conference like today, workshops, master classes, tours, literary events, all kinds of ways of engaging, food jams, kids making ice cream, all that great stuff. To understand and explore the past to address the challenges in our food system, we've also become a major platform for communications about the food system. And so our using that reach of 58 million isn't to sell tickets, right? I mean, it's lovely to have tickets with 500, 600 people in smaller events. You know, we're not putting 5,000 people in the convention center. It's 70 people here, it's 30 people for a master class, it's 12 people on a walk. The 58 million is really to raise awareness of the issues, to help people understand what's really going on in the food system, to motivate them to shift their behavior, to get engaged, to get involved, etc. And so that's one of the reasons why I want to just call out to our media partners. We've got the Food Justice Program at the Daily Maverick. We've got the SA Chefs Media. We have Russell from Table in the Corner. We have Cape Town TV who's here. These media partners are really so important because while we do a lot during the 2 weeks, it's only 2 weeks of the year. And our knowledge and understanding of what's going on in the food system and our opportunities to make a difference are year-round and year after year. And so that's a really big part of why we focus on that and why we found these partners who share many of the aspirations that we have for shifting our food system. It's also part of why we've focused on some experiments with these kinds of food engagements in other parts of Africa. We've been fortunate to be part of a project with a bit of funding and for us to support Food Indaba type of events in 4 other African cities, in Tunis, in Ouagadougou, in Burkina Faso, in Mbale, and in Kisumu, in Uganda and Kenya. And so to further broaden and diversify our reach, Miles had a great crack at us as Cape Townians, and we do tend to get parochial here and in South Africa as well. And our issues are often different, but not that special. And we're not that special. We're still human, we still eat, we still have challenges, we're still in Africa. So finding these commonalities and differences and getting diverse perspectives is really part of what this is all about, and we're really hoping to build on that. Part of it is also building critical mass to make space for change. So often we look to leaders for change, but leaders often follow. And I think we all know that experience. And we've got to create a space and help them understand that there is an appetite for change. And so we're trying to do that here by bringing you with us, by asking for your views on what we ought to be doing with our media reach and with this diversity, so that across Africa we can build the kind of appetite and space that can have that kind of change. And in South Africa in particular, we are by many measures the most unequal society on earth. We have the highest Gini coefficient, which measures inequality. And that reflects in extremely high levels of food and nutrition insecurity. Many of you may know that we have high levels of infant stunting, chronic malnutrition. About 1/3 of our children under the age of 6 are chronically malnourished, from which they will never recover. And there is some inherited consequences of that. So the children of people who are chronically malnourished will start at a biological disadvantage in their own lives. and that is a major setback for our society and for all of us. And so addressing nutrition security is a massive issue. We have a huge rise in non-communicable diseases, diabetes, and other forms of non-communicable disease that come from a Western diet, an ultra-processed food diet, and other sorts of challenges. And we also are an environment where the use of hunger as a political tool is unfortunately accepted. So we're fortunate in our society that we don't have an active armed conflict, but to be in an ostensibly free, peaceful, democratic society and to have such high levels of food insecurity and chronic malnutrition is really unconscionable. So how is it that the power structures can persist like that, much less in other places, Ukraine, Gaza, other places where, in Sudan, where food is used as a weapon of war? So these are some of the ways in which we need to interrogate what's happening in our food that makes this possible. And all of us have something to offer, right? We're all experts in our own way. Everybody eats. Everybody has a knowledge. Everybody has an experience. That doesn't mean we're all experts in all the same things, but we all share that in common. And so our voice is important. And turning to this year's theme, AI in the food system, it was a real challenge for us to stretch us. And about a year ago, when Ian really put his foot forward and said, no, this is for us, this is what we've got to do, it was really prescient in understanding the trajectory and the timing of change. And it forced us to understand our food system in a slightly different way. In previous years, we had looked at polycrisis, we had looked at food and the economy, things that make a little more sense for the food system. So AI, like what's that all about? And we'll go deep into that now, so I'm not going to say too much. But it also forced us to look at, underlying AI are questions of data and knowledge. And whose knowledge is it? How do we come to know things? We're working with kids tomorrow at the Science Center making ice cream with African ingredients like hibiscus and sorghum and so on. And asking the kids questions, do you know something more now at the end of this workshop than when you started? And do you know that with your brain? Or do you know that with your tongue? Or do you know that with your belly? Like, where does your knowledge sit? And do you know things that AI can't know? And what does that mean? And those kinds of questions stick with someone for a lifetime. And so these questions of knowledge, whose knowledge is it? What about indigenous knowledge? What are we sharing? Is it reflected in these AI systems? And right now the reality is no, it's not. I'm sure someone here will correct my stats, but I think it was 6 months ago, the stats given is that in these large language models like ChatGPT and DeepSeek and so on, less than 5% of the data is about Africa. And of that 5%, less than 3% is from Africa. So that's 0.15% of all the data is African data. Now if we think about that, 54 nations, all of our history, all of our diversity, all of our languages, our traditions, our food cultures, our stories, one data point in 700. We're effectively absent, right? So what does that mean for us? What does that mean for our knowledge? Do we want to contribute it? Are we reinforcing power structures that are already making trouble for us, that are resulting in chronic malnutrition and all kinds of other issues that we face? Are there alternatives? Can we opt out? Do we want to? So these are some of the things that we'll interrogate, but I think it's important to put on the table that there are big gaps between what we read in the headlines and what the reality is in these systems and how we engage with them, and I'm sure that's something we're going to dig into. And also, as we're wrestling with AI in the food system, we came to understand that as much as we're thinking about the data in these systems, those systems are thinking about us as data, right? So our activity, our behavior online, we're kind of familiar with that. The big social media companies and Google and others, they track us, they slice and dice us, and they know more about us than we do. And that's just getting more and more and more. So what does it mean to be viewed as a data source? And do we understand that? And it's not just our activity online, but our activity in life, right? There are ways of tracking and understanding through video and other technologies, everything that we do, and that data is being sold for profit, usually by those who are already powerful and wealthy. And what does that mean? So are we unwitting participants in a system that continues in injustice and so on? So we'll get into those questions a bit later today. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder. And so there's a lot at stake as we're about to do our deep dive into this. And so my ask is that you ask a lot of questions. that you listen twice and speak once, that we make space for the voice from the margins, those who aren't centered, those who might have an unconventional view. That kind of diversity often is important. It makes for better and deeper insights and opens up new ways of thinking that we might not have considered previously. And as heavy as some of these might be, I think in one of the earlier events we wound up Miles in a fairly pessimistic space where we were trying to imagine what the future is. And I think it's hard for us to imagine things that don't yet exist that might be positive. And it's hard to just be hopeful. It feels like magical thinking. But we know there will be nice things that come along. We just don't know what they are yet. So it's hard to put too much confidence in that. And we can very easily see what's real now that we love that is vulnerable, that we might lose. And so that makes us quite anxious. And we have good reasons to be anxious. But I also want us to have a bit of fun, right? The methodology of celebration is important. Food and culture and identity is not done by talking about it. It's done by eating and cooking and connecting with people. So there's a reason we have pastries, not just to keep your blood sugar up and so on. But please, let's have some fun as we do this. All right, I'm about to hand back to Miles, but I still want 2 more minutes. We are the penultimate day of this year's, Sunday's the last. What do you call it? The penultimate day?
Yeah.
Soon to be done with the food Indaba. And this year's theme will give way to themes to come. So while I know we're about to do our deep dive, just bear with me while I share the coming 5 years of themes, because I think for many of you to think about that and what your connection might be, and if you want to get involved, partner, if you have ideas for us, it's important that we think ahead so that we can align, collaborate, etc. So for next year, we're going to focus on water systems and food systems, and we're going to look at rivers, oceans, aquifers, and rain. So for those of you like me who are a food systems nerd, we talk about the water, energy, food nexus. It's not that. It's water systems and food systems. So we're going to look at small-scale fisheries and big commercial fisheries. We're going to look at our aquifers. We're going to look at changes of rainfall patterns. Anyway, water systems and food systems. And then in 2027, we're going to look at our food system as an enabler of adaptation to climate change. So there's a lot of focus on the problems that our food system brings to the climate crisis and to the environment. Big greenhouse gas, big pollution, lots of waste, big issues. But can we reimagine our food system as a force for positive change as we adapt to what's coming? So we'll do that in 2027. And then in 2028, we'll look at the food system and quality of life. So we do look at nutrition, physical well-being and health, but we'll look at mental health and social health and family health and so on. And so how do we understand well-being, and how is the well-being of our food system linked to the well-being and human flourishing? So that'll be a fantastic way of understanding the role of food in our life. Again, food is not just nutrients and calories, right? It's identity, it's income, it's family, etc. So stay with me, 2029, which seems a long time away, but we're going to look at informality in the food system. So, everything from street traders and hawkers and informal markets and spas and so on, up to the lady next door who makes jam and hands it out at Christmas or whatever it might be. Informality is everywhere in every society, in every strata, socioeconomic category. We often overlook it, or we look at it as something that is overtly negative or illegal or problematic, and that's just not the way things work. Certainly in Cape Town and in much of Africa, and that's okay. 60% to 70% of South Africans get their food through the informal food system. 9 billion rand a month of fresh fruit and veggie sales go through the central Gauteng informal food markets alone. A month, untaxed. It's big business. There's a lot going on. What does that mean, and how do we engage with that? And then 2030, the big event is the Sustainable Development Goals, right? The SDGs, set up with targets for 2030. So we're going to take stock. How do we do? Looking primarily at the food system, because that's what we do, but there may be some of the other SDGs that we have a look at in alignment, and assess what have we achieved, what's next, what have we learned, all of that. So if any of those themes or all of those themes speak to you, please speak to me, and we'll try and find ways of incorporating ideas and partnerships. And we always need more funding, but that's not the primary purpose. It's really to find what's happening now and align what we do to tell those stories, to share the perspectives and the data, etc. All right, I'm almost done, but I need to acknowledge all of our co-host sponsors and partners. So I'm going to read all of these, bear with me. I already mentioned SOLVE, the V&A Waterfront, and our sponsors at the Center of Excellence in Food Security, largely at the University of the Western Cape, but also in Pretoria. And then we've gotten funding from the European Union through the Afro-Food Links project. We've had some great initiatives that are primarily focused on that work, and we're grateful for that support. And that is the project that is also helping us in other parts of Africa. So that's been really a game changer for us. And then I'm going to read a laundry list, but these are all really important partners to us. The UNESCO Chair in Science and Education for African Food Systems, the African Center for Cities at the University of Cape Town, the Cape Town Science Center, Makers Landing, Daily Mavericks Food Justice Project, the City of Cape Town, the Greater Tygerberg Partnership, the University of Pretoria, the Data Science for Social Impact Research Group, the Deep Learning Indaba, ICLEI Africa, Cape Town TV, SA Chef Media, and a table in the corner. And then as a nonprofit, we're deeply grateful for the work that some of our outside agencies do for us. The 10X Collective with the media outreach and engagement has been fantastic. And Derek, Integrated Communications, who does all of our design and graphic work, and they've been indispensable partners, and we want to thank them very much. And then finally to our event team, including Wabisa, AJ, Isabel, Chandra, and so capably led by Ian Harris. And Ian really has become a real co-creator and an intellectual visionary partner in the food endowment. So thank you, Ian. And thanks to all of you for your patient attention. And please participate, listen twice, speak once, give people space to change their minds, give yourself permission to change your minds, and have a great day. Back to you, moms.